What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is the series where I go over all of the stats as well as some excellent attachment combinations for every gun in Modern Warfare 2. And in today's episode, we're going to be covering the brand new FR Avancer. And starting it off as always, let's have a look at our damage profile. And with this gun, it is going to be a 4 to 6 shot kill if you can hit torso shots. However, it's not very forgiving with those torso shots. Within the first 2 damage ranges, every single shot has to hit the torso if you want to get that number of shots to kill. And the moment you hit a limb shot, it's now going to take you an additional shot to kill. Unless, of course, you also combine some headshots in there. And speaking of headshots, we do have the potential to get a 3-shot kill to the head, but every single bullet needs to hit the head, so I wouldn't say that's going to be a very frequent occurrence. But it can be nice to mix those headshots in, just for the consistency in the number of shots to kill. As for our rate of fire, this is the fastest in the assault rifle category at 923 rounds per minute, and what this means is our time to kill, if we can get a 4-shot kill, this is 195 milliseconds, which is quite fast for an assault rifle. That's actually very competitive with most of the SMGs in the game. And it's also worth noting we carry a pretty decent time to kill potential out to longer ranges as well for an assault rifle. Next, let's have a look at our bullet velocity, which is just standard for the assault rifles at 590 meters per second. And now let's move on to our ranges. And as we can see here, our 4-shot kill potential is quite solid at 30 meters. And then our 5-shot kill potential will extend out to about 41 meters. And anything beyond that will be a 6-shot kill. So raw power-wise, this gun is actually pretty solid as long as you can hit those torso shots. But now let's move into Hipfire, and we have very standard Hipfire for assault rifles, nothing out of the ordinary here. Next, let's have a look at our recoil, which is not bad, especially when you consider the fast fire rate. This is a reasonably accurate gun. It does kick pretty much straight upward, and then it will start drifting a bit to the left after the first 5 or 6 shots. And especially when you combine this with the iron sight, which I think is really nice and clean. I actually love the iron sight on this gun. I find it quite easy to hit targets quite consistently, even when stretching the range out a bit. Now, let's move on to our handling stats, and unfortunately our aim down sight time isn't very good for an assault rifle on this. It's roughly 285 milliseconds, so a little bit on the slow side. However, our sprint to fire time is standard for assault rifles at 210 milliseconds. Then when we have a look at our reload add time, this is pretty much standard for assault rifles as well. It's not bad at all at 1.57 seconds. Now, it is also worth noting here, something you may have already noticed, this gun only has a 25-round magazine, whereas most of the other assault rifles have a 30-round mag by default, so that is one minor downside, and you also only spawn in with 50 rounds in reserve, whereas all the other assault rifles tend to have a 60-round reserve, so those are a couple things that you probably want to be aware of when building your class setups. But now let's finally move into our movement speeds, and all of our movement speeds are exceptional for assault rifles. And when it comes to our base movement speed and sprint movement speed, these are actually better than most of the SMGs in the game. So this is a very, very fast gun for getting around the map quickly. However, it is worth noting while our aim walking movement speed is still great for an assault rifle, it's the best in the category, it is slower than all of the SMGs. So you can strafe a bit better than the other assault rifles, but not quite as good as an SMG. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for the base stats of the FR Avancer. Now let's move into the unique attachments, and we'll start this off with barrels and how they impact our ranges. And as we can see here, the first barrel, that 600mm longbore barrel, this one will increase our damage ranges by 29%, which is quite a nice boost. Whereas the other two will both reduce our damage ranges. The second barrel will reduce it by 5%, and the third barrel will reduce our range by 12%. Then taking a look at how they impact our recoil, there's really not a massive difference with any of these, although I would say the second barrel, that 435mm barrel, does seem to give us the best recoil pattern out of all of these. And then finally, let's have a look at how these barrels impact our aim down sight speeds, and unfortunately that first barrel really destroys our aim down sight time. It's down 360 milliseconds, which at least for multiplayer I would say is generally not worth that range increase. Maybe in Warzone that's a lot more viable though. Whereas the second barrel barely hurts our aim down sight speed, that's not too bad at all, and then the third one actually improves our aim down sight speed by a little bit. And then finally, for the noteworthy unique attachments here, let's have a look at magazines and how they impact our aim down sight speed. And this is especially important with this gun since we have a really small default magazine capacity. With the 45-round mag, this will slow our aim down sight speed down to about 320 milliseconds, whereas the 60-round mag will slow it down to about 330 milliseconds. So there we go, that's going to wrap it up for the breakdown of all of the important stats of the FR Avancer. Now let's move into a couple great attachment combinations I threw together for you guys. The first one I wanted to share is my balanced stealth build. Stealth builds are still very powerful in the game right now, with that UAV bug still being present on at least a bunch of the maps. But with this, we have the Echo Line GS suppressor, the Schlager Peckbox 4 laser, the FR Sprinter stock, which helps a bit with our aim walking movement speed and our sprint movement speed. We've got the RMT grip, and then finally the 45 round magazine there. And with all of this combined, we actually get a slightly better aim down sight speed than the base at 275 milliseconds, and our sprint out time is also improved. We're staying off the radar with that suppressor, and our recoil does suffer a little bit with this build, but I still find that I have no problem challenging enemies, even out to fairly long ranges, so it's still accurate enough, at least in my eyes. And so far, this has actually been my preferred build, at least with the UAV bug present, just to make sure I'm staying off the radar. Normally, if that UAV bug wasn't present, I would be swapping this out for a Sack and Tread 40. That one does really nicely tighten up the recoil, and that would make for quite an accurate version of this build. But until that UAV bug gets fixed, I'm sticking with suppressors. I'm trying to stay off the radar as much as possible, and that's why I really like this build. As for the next one I wanted to share, since this gun excels so much with movement speed, I wanted to make an aggressive build for you guys. So with this, we're using that 395mm mini bore barrel, tuned for aim walking speed. We've got the Schlager Peckbox 4, tuned for aim down sight speed and aim walking steadiness. And we once again have that FR Sprinter stock, since this helps directly with our aim walking movement speed. And then for the really snappy aim down sight speed and sprint out time, we've got the FR Giga Comb and the RMT grip. Both of these help in those areas. So with this build, we have a really snappy aim down sight speed at 215 milliseconds. Our sprint out time is also excellent at 150 milliseconds. And our aim walking movement speed is nicely improved at almost 3 meters per second, which is pretty decent for strafing in a gunfight, especially for an assault rifle. This is about as good as it gets. And that makes this a really good, aggressive, close range sort of a gun. However, the recoil is going to hold this back at longer ranges. So this definitely isn't the type of gun where I'd be trying to challenge people like across the map, for instance. You generally want to keep yourself up close and personal while using this one. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for today's gun guide on the FR Avancer. As for my thoughts on this gun, I actually really enjoy using it. On paper, when I was first collecting the stats and looking at it, it wasn't looking like it was going to be too great because you have to hit all those shots to the upper torso, and therefore it just seemed like a very unforgiving gun. But then in practice, when I actually got my hands on it and I started grinding through the levels, I found it to be very consistent, and I think their high fire rate really helps to make up for that. So even if you do miss that 4-shot kill and it requires the 5th shot to kill, it's not that big of a deal. You still get a great time to kill. Like I said, the iron sights are super clean on it, which I really like. I don't think I'll ever use an optic on this gun. It's just so nice and clean. And yeah, I just had a great experience with it while leveling it up, so I highly recommend trying it out if you guys haven't yet. And with that, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments down below. What do you think about the FR Avancer? Do you guys like this gun so far, or not so much? If you guys have missed any of the previous episodes of Gun Guides, I will leave a link to the playlist in the description down below. We do have the brand new sniper rifle to cover as well, but I probably won't get to that until early next week. So hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I'll talk to you guys next time.